under arrest.
I'd better call Saul.
Hi, I'm Saul Goodman. Did you know that you have rights? The Constitution says you do, and so do I. I believe that until proven guilty, every man, woman, and child in this country is innocent. And that's why I fight for you, Albuquerque.
Better call Saul. Saul Goodman, attorney at law. 505-164-CALL. 505-164-CALL.
What's your prediction?
Vicious win.
Vicious win. Thank you, Dad.
Love you.
Love you too.
Big league.
Big league.
And I think we're going to make it big league.
Big league. Big league.
And that's what's happened, big league.
Big league.
Big league. And we're going to win big league.
Yeah. Big league.
Welcome back into the Door Report, episode 295 on a Monday.
Oh, yeah.
A Monday. That almost screwed me up very early. Monday, December 16th, 2024. I am Will Byrum, joined as always by my co-host, Trevor Hulan, a.k.a. Hack Squad, Jim Duggan. Here at the Door Report, we are presented by 615 Collectibles. If you're into sports cards or sports memorabilia, check out 615 Collectibles on eBay. Items include NFL team packs, individual cards, graded cards, and more. You can find them at www.ebay.com/STR/615 Collectibles, or you can just search 615 Collectibles in the eBay search bar. Shipping is always fast and free. Trevor, we have 0 games.
Once again, yeah.
0 games to recap, 0 games to preview in the upcoming week.
Yeah.
But we are previewing a football game.
Our last of the season.
295, the last football game to preview of the 2024 college football season. Vanderbilt's bowl game. We discussed it a little bit last week on episode 294, but we really didn't do a preview at all.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with the preview. We didn't talk about Georgia Tech. We didn't talk about this matchup, what we expect to see. But we've had a little bit of time to stew on the matchup, and there's been some interesting roster movement. And I think it was actually our old friend James Franklin had a quote saying, and he was actually referencing with the college football playoff, but this overlap in the transfer portal, I don't know how you fix it. We have, the reason I bring this up is both Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt, but Georgia Tech mainly have some key pieces that are transferring out of those programs. So it's bowl games, but it's also the college football playoff teams. Specifically, how do you fix this transfer portal at the end of the fall semester before the spring semester begins when you have football games going on in the new spring semester? You can't adjust the portal because, as much of a joke as people think it is, these guys are students as well.
Yeah.
And they have to enroll in spring classes.
Yeah.
They have to finish their fall classes and enroll in their spring classes. So there's not a lot of flexibility on when the portal can happen.
Exactly.
So are we in an unfixable problem with these teams kind of pillaging each other while bowl games are still yet to be played?
Yeah, I actually do think we are. Typically for things like this, I try to think, I'm like, okay, is there a solution? And like you said, for the main reason I don't think that this is fixable is because we have to remember, even though these kids are getting paid like they're professional athletes, they're still students. And the spring transfer portal is much more forgiving for the teams than the winter one. Because in the spring, you have the summer, you're already out of classes. You have a longer time to think about where you want to go, survey your options. This time of year, you have a couple of weeks, really 2-3 weeks, before you need to get your stuff and move to a whole nother city. Oftentimes these kids are moving across the country. So I don't think this is fixable. The only option would be to just not have a transfer portal in the fall, but that would never happen. And that would screw the kids come spring.
But it's something interesting to keep an eye on, because there is the side of these rosters being pillaged, yada, 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 key players not playing in bowl games. That's a conversation a lot of people have had, and we don't need to keep talking about, of course it devalues bowl games, whatever. The interesting part of this is now that we've expanded to a 12-team college playoff, a lot more teams are experiencing very meaningful postseason games.
Yeah.
So those 12 teams, including teams like SMU, including teams like Indiana. Those teams really can't make space or recruit during this time period the same way schools that are on the edge that didn't make the college football playoff can.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting. The big dogs like Texas, Georgia, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
They will be able to get guys no matter what because their names are Texas and Georgia. They have the pedigree. But schools like Indiana that have had a recent influx in NIL funding, schools like SMU,
Arizona State,
is this going to negatively impact those teams next season? Are we going to see, they call it the Super Bowl hangover in the NFL, are we going to see a college football playoff hangover from those non-traditional teams that make it because they weren't able to capitalize on the early period of the transfer portal? I can very much see that happening because there's a lot of talent flowing between these teams. And those college football playoff teams can't be a part of it near as much as they would like to be. They're, of course, recruiting, but they have their eyes set on accomplishments still for this season.
Yeah.
That schools, even like Vanderbilt, that are playing in the Birmingham Bowl, and they do still have games, their eyes are still peeking towards 2025. Even though the bowl game is a celebration, basically the meaningfulness of 2024 is over win-loss wise.
Yeah.
Of course, you want to win the bowl game. Of course you do. It's not what I'm saying. But it's going to be interesting if there is a college football playoff hangover for those schools, like Arizona State is a great example.
Well, and I think what's going to happen is eventually you're just going to, with those sorts of teams, you're just going to cycle through these teams that might not be traditional blue bloods, and they're going to make it, and it's going to be a big deal for your teams like Indiana, for your teams like Arizona State. But they're going to get bounced very early. And then the next year, it's going to be another team from those conference. And they're probably going to get bounced really early. And it's just going to be, as much as I like the expansion of the college football playoff, and you could look at who is in the playoff and be like, wow, that's a lot of parity. When it's all said and done, I don't think there'll be much parity because I think your quarterfinals, your semifinals, your championship games are going to be your Oregons, your Texas, your Georgias.
I mean, we all have to come to the reality, similar to the NCAA basketball tournament that starts now with 68 teams. Most of the time,
yeah,
pretty much every time in the modern era, at the end of the day, the winner of that tournament is a traditional power that's been great all season, or they're a traditional name like a Virginia.
So 1 through 4 seed.
Even if they're a higher seed, they're a traditional blue blood. And that's ultimately is like you can give all these guys a bite at the apple, but at the end of the day, there's a reason why these are the big dogs and these are the kind of the G5 schools.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens, but I kind of tend to agree with you. Now, nobody really knows what's going to happen because this is all new.
Yeah.
Literally completely brand new, and we're learning on the fly, but I think there will be a college football playoff hangover of some kind. So we've got that. We are going to talk a little bit of basketball. No games to recap, but there are games coming up on the horizon, and a reminder that we will not be releasing an episode next week before Christmas.
Yeah.
That will be TDR's off week, so we will not have a game or an episode recapping the upcoming games for Vanderbilt basketball.
Before we get to the next segment, do you have a team that you're cheering for in the college football playoff? Because mine is, first and foremost, going to be the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Well,
and whoever plays the Tennessee Vols, if they, God forbid, they win. But I love an underdog. I would love to see Boise State. They're not going to, but I would love to see
the
Boise
only
State.
thing that hurts me a little bit is that the underdog from the G5 or from the non-Power 4 conferences is Boise State.
Heisman runner.
I have no issue with Boise State, but that's not exactly like Charlotte. That's not exactly like Army. That's not a true under the radar. How did they get here? Boise State's been in the national spotlight for a long time since beating Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, however many years ago that was. 09?
No, longer, 2007.
Whatever it was. But Boise State is a big name in college football. I think probably the committee did see something like that happening, but in my heart of hearts, I was hoping to see a true, like, not no-name school, because I know all the
schools, but like Army.
Yeah, like an Army.
I would have
like
liked
a
to see
true
Army.
Underdog. But yeah, I would say probably my heart leans, obviously, Ohio State to beat Tennessee. My heart leans a little bit to Indiana.
I would like to see Indiana,
just because it's such an amazing turnaround, and to see that carried over, I don't think they're going to do well. But Indiana is where I kind of lean. Of course, you want to see Boise State. They're the non-Power 4 team, but also Arizona State. Anybody that's kind of an out there non-traditional school that's in there, that's who I'm going to root for.
Out of the traditional schools, I know this school gets so much hate. I would like to see Notre Dame win a national title. People hate on Notre Dame. I have no negative feelings towards Notre Dame. I know the generations before us hate Notre Dame, and I get that. But in my lifetime, I have no reason to really hate Notre Dame. If one of the underdogs didn't get it, I would like to see Notre Dame win.
I don't really have any of the big dogs. Notre Dame is probably the one I have some of the least bad feelings toward.
Yeah.
Oregon, I don't really have any bad feelings towards
just
because
meh.
they're out on the West Coast.
Yeah.
SMU,
I like Dan Lanning.
SMU, I don't have any bad feel. I don't think they'll go far either. But really, I'm kind of meh on. I can't wait to watch it as a football fan.
As long as it's not Tennessee.
As
that's
long
all
as
I
it's
care
not
about.
Tennessee, and there's something about me that I do/don't want to see Georgia win 3 in a row. Does that I don't want to see it happen, but at the same time, we haven't seen that happen.
Yeah.
So there's two sides. It'd be cool to say I saw that happen, but I really don't want to see Georgia fans win 3 straight.
Yeah. My thing is I want every SEC team to lose.
There we go.
So
I don't want Texas.
even if they're not a rival, like bowl season, I will not cheer for a single SEC team. That's just unless they play Tennessee.
There we go. But we're still in the intro, so we have a lot to get to in episode 295. We thought this was going to be a 30-minute episode. Looks like it's not going to be. Before we get into everything we discussed and much more, don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at The Door Report. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and a review on iTunes. It's now time for segment 1. Welcome back into segment 1 of episode 295 on a Monday evening, releasing on a Tuesday, very rainy Monday.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be hitting basketball first. There's not a lot to talk about with basketball, but before we get on basketball, there's something we tweeted about that we didn't even talk about in the intro that I meant to talk about. TDR, the Door Report on Twitter, has hit 10,000 followers. That is a huge accomplishment. Thank you to everyone that has followed us. Shout out to TDR Nation, everybody that follows us on Twitter. 10,000 followers. That's the first follower milestone that has really stuck out in my brain. I remember tweeting out about 2,000 followers.
Yeah.
So 10,000 is a big accomplishment. Seeing that 10K
And
is pretty nice.
I bet whenever that 2K hit, you're like, wow, 2,000 people. And now it's 10K. I mean, 10,000 people.
Solid.
That'll fill up a lot of concert venues. That'll fill up a lot of concert venues. I mean, we got all of TDR Nation in a building. Dude, we have a small army.
Small army. Big things coming, however. 10,000 followers.
Just a blimp on the radar.
Just a blip. There are big things coming for the Door Report. Cannot announce anything yet, but we have some big things
soon,
coming.
friends.
Soon, friends. Just keep in mind, this is not the end. This is only the beginning. Let's keep it rolling. The revolution will be televised.
We told you guys that the revolution will be televised, and they called us idiots. They called us morons. They said, I'm not turning on my TV. There's no revolution coming. Christmas season's coming up. It's time to buy that TV and turn it on.
Hook it up to the cable. The
Big
revolution.
things cooking.
Big things are cooking. But now let's get to basketball, where nothing is cooking.
Have we had a game since the last pod?
No. The Vanderbilt Commodores, I think their last game was on the 8th of December.
Yeah.
They had a 10-day break. Their next matchup is against the Citadel at home, the 18th, 7 p.m. Central Time on the SEC Network.
Wednesday.
Then on the 21st, Vanderbilt plays at home against your Austin Peay Governors.
Yep. Go Govs. I will always be a proud Gov.
2 p.m. Central Time.
I will be at that game. I will be cheering for the Commodores.
So then there is actually one more game after that before SEC play begins. That will be after our next episode, Vanderbilt at home against New Orleans. To read off where those teams rank in the Ken Palm, this is going to cut to the chase. None of them are very good. Vanderbilt plays the Citadel, who is currently 351st in the Ken Palm, and they play Austin Peay on the 21st of December, who is currently 263rd in the Ken Palm. And then they play New Orleans on the 30th, who is 346th in the Ken Palm. So not a lot of heavy competition. How Vanderbilt has played so far, how Mark Byington and this team have taken care of business, should be 3 wins going into SEC play. I will be personally very disappointed if they lose to any of those 3 teams.
If they lose to any of those 3 teams, and this is not rational at all, but if they do lose to any of those 3 teams, I would be teetering on the fire Byington train.
They're going to lose one now because he said that. But
No, I'm not a big jinx
they're-
guy.
No,
I'm
it's
a
not
big
even a
jinx
jinx.
guy.
It's not a jinx. They are due for a piss poor performance against a shitty team. Now, will that result in a loss? That's the question.
Yeah.
But they haven't shot great against some of these lower level teams, but they haven't had a bad performance overall as a team. They haven't had one where you were like, they're throwing the ball out of bounds. What the hell are you doing? You could say that was against Drake, but Drake's a quality opponent. I mean, they're 73rd in the Ken Palm right now. So they're due for a bad game. With this roster, I think they can play a bad game against these teams and still come out with a win.
Double-digit win.
So hopefully we're seeing 3 wins and going into SEC play with 1 loss.
Yeah.
That's the hope, because there was a stat tweeted out, and I want to give credit where credit is due, from Blake Lavelle. He tweeted out the average Ken Palm ranking of in-conference opponents for SEC teams, basically a strength of schedule measure. Vanderbilt has the toughest conference schedule of any SEC team. Vanderbilt's average SEC opponent Ken Palm ranking is 27.4. The average opponent Vanderbilt plays is basically a top 25 team from here on out once SEC play starts.
Yeah.
Now, I will say the easiest schedule in the SEC is an average Ken Palm ranking from Texas A&M at 33.8.
Which
So
is
great.
great.
Yeah, no one has a breeze. Basically, the point of that stat was the SEC is insane this year.
Yeah.
Incredibly, maybe the best SEC overall from top to bottom that we have ever seen.
I don't think there's a maybe about it. I think it is. In my lifetime, this is the best top to bottom SEC basketball conference I have ever seen in my entire life.
So once again, not trying to be wet blanket Will. He will not be coming onto this podcast too much, but Vanderbilt's sitting at 9-1 right now. 3 very winnable games. Should be 12-1 going into SEC play. That's going to feel really good. Don't be surprised when Vanderbilt faces some struggles against SEC competition.
Yeah.
They haven't played yet really a single team that's going to be at the level of the average opponent they have in conference play. Nevada's a good team. Drake's a good team. They're not to the level of the average SEC opponent they're going to face. So much like football normally is, once conference play starts, I'm not saying lower the expectations, but just keep attached to reality and don't press the panic button.
Yeah,
is all that I'm saying.
For a little context, this, in terms of how good the SEC conference is this year in basketball, it is very similar and better than a lot of like those 2010 ACC basketball teams. I mean, it's statistically speaking, it is right up there with some of the years the ACC had in basketball. And everybody knows how dominant ACC basketball has been our entire lifetime. This conference is up there with some of those premier teams this year. So, and Vanderbilt's going to drop some. Vanderbilt's going to lose some ugly ball games this year in conference play. But I'm saying this now. That's not an indictment on this team. You know, it's a brand new team, all brand new faces, new coaching staff, new head coach going into the best SEC conference we've seen in basketball in our lifetime. So there's going to be some bumps along the way. I think everybody knew that, but just I hate when people hit the panic button. And so whenever Vanderbilt gets blown out, if I see somebody hit the panic button, I'm going to get pissed off.
And if you're a regular listener to TDR, which a bulk of the people that listen to this show are regular listeners, you're probably thinking, Trevor, Will, you've said this same rant like 5 times.
It's going to happen.
It's because we can see the inevitable future
It's going
of
to
people
happen.
starting to question this team and where they are at. So we're just getting ahead of that, reminding you that struggles are expected right now. So we don't need to talk about more basketball. We don't have any new product we've seen on the court to evaluate. So I just wanted to get some basketball out early.
Women's basketball?
Do you know what's going on with it?
Not a clue.
Me either. They're still good.
I know they're hooping,
but let's get to the transfer portal in football.
Perfect.
In the Vanderbilt side of things, because there have been some updates. I said week by week we're going to try to do our best to update on the TDR Twitter. Since the last episode, the biggest news in the transfer portal, Vanderbilt has landed a huge commitment from former Alabama edge rusher Keanu Coote, former 4-star top 60 national player according to 24/7 Composite Sports Rankings in the class of 2021. Immediately addresses a huge need from Vanderbilt football. And we do have to discuss it and talk about it a little bit. The reason he is leaving Alabama.
Yeah.
A little bit unique. And if you look up his name, there are interesting articles written about Keanu Coote. One of which, and I'll get ahead of this one because it's a little easier. One was a speeding ticket. Reckless driving.
105.
I think 105 and a 45 or something along
Yeah.
those lines. So don't speed.
Yeah.
Nashville PD, Metro PD, don't ticket him. But don't speed, Keanu.
Yeah.
The other one, the other reason he's leaving the Alabama program, a little more touch and go. Trevor, you want to discuss the other reason why Keanu Coote has lost favor with the Alabama football program?
Yeah.
Not on field play.
No. So unprompted, Mr. Coote sent a photo of his no-no box to
Private parts.
Kalen DeBoer's daughter,
Mm.
Unsolicited.
Which, keep in mind, I want to add the caveat. Kalen DeBoer's daughter is a student at Alabama.
Yes.
So when you hear daughter, that sounds worse.
Yes.
It's not good.
Not good at all.
Not good regardless. But daughter who is a fellow student at Alabama.
Yes.
So just to add that.
Yes. But that obviously was troublesome. Troublesome. For those that are listening, it's never good to send a picture like that regardless. I don't care if a lady asks for it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
When is it go? Okay. So you've started. This is getting on a whole other topic.
I'm just saying,
There's-
guys, for the young,
No,
impressionable
I'm-
minds,
but I'm
don't
saying-
do it.
At a certain point, because it's become a popular thing and within SEC Twitter and different things
Just guys
of guys getting doxxed on Snapchat, pictures of Snapchat chats. Carson
Just-
Beck comes to mind. There are plenty of players, guys,
diabolically
use your
down
brother.
bad.
Is it corny that the females expose them? The DeBoer thing, that's different.
That's
DeBoer's
different.
Different. We're on a different topic.
She was not in the wrong.
Nope. Not what we're saying.
Keanu was in the
Keanu,
wrong.
rush that passer, brother.
Yeah.
Let's stay locked in. Let's stay honed in. We're rushing the passer.
Do not talk to women.
We're focused on one thing.
The ball.
We're focused on football. That
ball.
That ball.
Yeah.
All right, brother. But yeah, let's keep in mind. I know these guys are 18 to 23. It's a tough time to get exposed. There's, I'm sure, some questionable things that everybody has sent in college at a certain point or another. But use your brains.
Yeah.
Your names. You are basically professional athletes.
Use the head up here.
No dick pics. Yes. Use your head up here.
Use the
not
head up
down
here,
there.
not down there.
Exactly. So, hell of a get for Vanderbilt, however.
Regardless,
On the field, he's learned his lesson. On the field,
Yes.
incredible get, a defensive outlook changing get
Yeah.
for Vanderbilt.
He instantly becomes the best edge rusher on the team. Like that is we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I forget which episode, but like to where you were like, you need a couple more Randon Fontanettes. That is a Randon Fontanette
That's a
type of
physical
get.
freak that they do not and have not had in the past.
Exactly.
6'4.5", 220, whatever it is, 230.
Yeah, to where you said you got one of those last year in Randon. You need 3 or 4 more. Well, you just got one in Keanu Coote.
He looks like he's one of those guys that looks like a video game character. Like
Yeah.
like you made him on Road to Glory on College Football 25. There
Yeah.
was another commit. I won't say near as big a physical freak as Keanu Coote, who was the biggest get, but Vanderbilt punter U has landed their next star at the punting position. Trevor Hulan's thinner younger brother.
Yeah. Aussie.
His brother from down under, Nick Haybearer. How do you pronounce
I think Haber.
Haybearer,
Shout out,
whatever you want to
twin.
call it. Somebody send us the proper pronunciation. We will pronounce it correctly. But a transfer from Washington State, former Aussie punter, following the beautiful bloodline and precedent that has been set by Matthew Hayball and Jesse Mirko.
Oh, crikey, mate.
Vanderbilt is officially punter U.
Yeah.
Big shoes to fill.
Big
however.
shoes.
Big shoes.
Dude, what is it with Australians just having a
Rugby.
God-gifted ability to punt? Is it rugby?
It's rugby.
You think so?
100%. It's because they have a very similar sport that athletes play from a young age that prioritizes kicking.
Yeah.
So in football, in American football, if you're a decent athlete, you're playing somewhere on the field.
Yeah.
Like you're not primarily the kicker. In rugby, if you're a decent athlete, you're still kicking the ball in rugby.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it is. And then they also have all those punter universities and different things, all those punting camps in Australia. I don't know. That's all the theory I have.
Dude,
on it.
all I know is those kids can boom it. It's truly a sight to see.
It is. So great get for Vanderbilt replacing. You need that. That's a get that flies under the radar all off season. And then during the season, everybody rants or raves in one direction or the other about their special teams.
Yeah.
This is when you get good special teams.
Yeah.
So good get by Vanderbilt and staff. That's pretty much it. That is it as far as commits are concerned. Vanderbilt has had some movement as far as visits and offers. Vanderbilt has Kamarion Pimpton, a former 4-star tight end commit that ended up flipping his commitment to LSU, who has entered the portal. He is officially taking a visit to Vanderbilt December 21st through 22nd. That would be a massive get and a playmaker that Vanderbilt desperately needs.
Yeah, Vanderbilt has a lot of really, really big names visiting Nashville.
I'm going to run through those, not give as much detail. Vanderbilt also has a defensive lineman that has already visited.
Yeah.
Texas A&M defensive lineman Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy visited Vanderbilt December 12th through 13th. Vanderbilt also offered Northern Illinois safety Santana Banner, who as a freshman last season had 54 tackles, an interception, and a forced fumble.
I really like that kid.
So there's been some movement, and then they also had an offensive lineman from Virginia Tech visit Vanderbilt as well. He was actually a former 4-star defensive lineman coming out of high school, but a transfer. Always good to have more depth and beef on that offensive line.
Also, Jordan White from Liberty visited Vanderbilt. That would be a huge get. I believe a 4-star transfer portal guy.
And then also Virginia Tech transfer wide receiver Chance Fitzgerald is set to visit Vanderbilt, a former 4-star in the class of 2023, and is from Nashville, Tennessee.
Local kid, went to Nolensville High School.
And that is one Virginia Tech fans, based on a couple message board posts, are not happy who has entered the portal. A young guy that has a lot of talent. So, there's a lot of movement. We don't really know, but overall Vanderbilt has been very active so far. You're seeing a lot of rumors, but the number one rumor, and we'll go ahead and get this discussion out of the way before we go to the TDR cocktail break, Diego Pavia and his eligibility.
Yeah.
This is the biggest question regarding Vanderbilt's roster of the entire 2025 roster. I mean, quarterback is king for a reason. If you have a quarterback, you have a chance.
Yeah.
And that's a saying for a reason. Diego Pavia currently is suing the NCAA for an additional year or two of eligibility. He played at a JUCO prior to transferring to New Mexico State, the New Mexico Military Institute, I believe is the name.
Correct.
The argument being made, and I'm not a lawyer, so if I'm misrepresenting this, please go read articles.
Yeah.
I'm doing my best here. Blake Fromang, lawyer, if he wants to join and break this down, we'd love to have him.
Yeah.
Might have to reach out to Blake, actually, before this ruling comes down or when it does come down. But he's suing the NCAA for an additional year or two of eligibility from playing in JUCO, stating to capitalize on future revenue from NIL now that it is opened. And the argument made by his lawyer was that if Diego Pavia is going to make a living playing football, it's going to be as a college football player. And the main argument and where this case hinges is that JUCOs play prep academies all the time. There are these things I don't think a lot of people are aware of. I'm not extremely versed in them, but there are prep academies that players can go to, play football, and they do not count against NCAA eligibility. So when they graduate high school, they're not quite ready. They need to put on weight, need to develop a little more. They can go to this place, continue to stay in shape with football, and hopefully sign with the JUCO out of this prep academy or sign to a D1 program, something along those lines. So those do not count against your eligibility, and they often play against junior colleges. So that is the argument, is Diego could have gone to one of these prep schools during this time for a season. Instead, he decided to pursue education. He should not be punished, and JUCO players should not be punished for pursuing college credits while playing football. Instead, they could just go pay for play at one of these prep academies, get nothing out of it, and they're still eligible for the full time. So that's the basic argument of it. My take the whole time, based on the news that we have read and the feelings around it and people we have talked to, there's a lot of optimism about how this is going to be ruled. My wet blanket will take this entire time has been the NCAA is just hitting the end of the COVID eligibility debacle. And I think that's the only word to use, is debacle. Players are now getting 7th, 8th years of eligibility due to combinations of COVID and medical red shirts and different things. The NCAA doesn't want that anymore. They really got pressed in a hard spot during COVID, and they did the best they could. I don't know what the right answer is. I don't think there was a right answer, but they're just now getting out of that disaster. Do they want to set a new precedent that now opens the door for more players to have extended eligibility? Because the problem is the guys that played JUCO during that same time period are not limited to Diego Pavia. There are a lot more guys that this precedent would apply to. So that's my holdup in this. The argument they've made is a lot better than what I anticipated. It makes logical sense, but it would be a new precedent of NCAA eligibility that would apply to more people than Diego Pavia. So that's been my holdup the whole time. Right now, if I had to put a number, I feel like 60% in Pavia's favor, 40% not. Some people feel better, some people feel worse. There was Braden McPherson, contributor to TDR, said that exact percentage as well, and I agreed with him. But Trevor, how are you kind of feeling, and did I miss anything with that breakdown?
No, so I've chatted with some people within the program, and they said this is okay to share for the most part. Not for the most part. That they said this is okay to share. I don't know why I said that. People within the program, based on what they have been told, because it's also should be noted that they were not allowed in to the hearing. So they didn't get to sit in and hear about what the judge was asking, what the attorneys on both sides were saying. But those within the Vanderbilt program feel very optimistic about Diego Pavia's ability to return. Additionally, people within certain camps, within Vanderbilt, even more specific, feel hyper confident. Take that as you may. I'm not giving an order or a ruling because, like I said, I don't know. I'm not in those hearings. And ultimately, it comes down to the judge. I will make a note. Like you said, and I agree, this would be opening up a whole new precedent in terms of NCAA eligibility. But every time the NCAA has had to go to court, whether it be a circuit or federal, the courts have ruled against the NCAA. So it's not necessarily a precedent, but there is a trend of courts ruling against the NCAA. The courts have set a trend that they are not big fans of the NCAA. So I think they don't care that they would set a new precedent because they've already set so many new precedents. So they're like, why not another?
This is what I'm very glad you talked about this. This is where I tend to misrepresent in the nuance because it's the legal system. So, and I'm an idiot, so I'm doing my best. But differentiate. This judge is not an NCAA judge. So
no,
that's
he's a state judge.
Yeah, that's all. That's the part that I didn't want. Is the NCAA? What I'm more concerned about is the judge ruling it at a state level.
Yeah,
and then the NCAA be fully willing to fight it due to just getting over the precedent they set before.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the part I skipped over, but I'm very glad you said that. I could see him winning this case and that not being the end of it. But also I can see the other side is the NCAA's gotten their ass kicked repeatedly recently.
Yeah.
And they don't want to take it to that level.
Yeah.
So, but something will have to be done if a Tennessee judge rules this. There will be further proceedings if a Tennessee judge makes this ruling.
Yeah.
Because this will have widespread implications.
Yeah. And it's just, I do want to note, NCAA has gone to court a lot over the past 2-3 years regarding eligibility in NIL and stuff like that. And they've lost just about every single one of them.
And the logic being used, if I was personally just someone hearing this, reading the rules, until I dug into it and read, until I'd completely forgotten about the Prep Academy comparison. Like that is where I had forgotten. Once that was brought up, if I was an objective judge who is probably not a college football fan, probably just ruling it based on how the law is written.
Yeah.
The logic of that makes no sense. So it can go two directions. Either prep academies have to count against your eligibility or because that's unfair. And there's a lack of logic there. So that's what gives me hope is that the judge is going to see that. And I think that's why there's optimism is they are pointing out a fatal flaw in logic is why is he being punished for what you claim These are student athletes. You claim that these guys are doing this, and most of them are going pro in something other than sports. They should be utilizing their athletic abilities to increase and pursue further education. So why is he being punished now and being negated the amount of funds he can earn because he attended a JUCO instead of a prep academy? So
exactly
that logic, that's why now I'm saying 60%, 70%. I'll stick at 60% that I feel good about Pavia. Before I was more at like 10%. I thought it was like a pipe dream that Pavia was going to have eligibility. That's how I felt right when he filed the suit.
If this is my personal opinion, and this does not reflect anybody's opinion within the Vanderbilt program, my personal opinion is I would go 60-40 as well. I'm not saying nobody is saying he's going to win. I'm just saying people are optimistic.
Yep.
So if this comes out and he doesn't win, nobody pitchfork me. Just things are fluid.
But there's not much point in getting into the nitty-gritty gray area, but all parties involved are kind of stuck.
We're just waiting on the judge.
Yeah, you're just waiting, and the claim is that there will be a judgment and a ruling before the end of the portal and before the portal closes on the 28th of December.
Yeah.
Now, is that going to be the morning of the 28th? Is that going to maybe?
It could be, yeah.
But that screws Vanderbilt in the idea that if Pavia is ruled eligible, obviously Diego Pavia has earned the starting quarterback position at Vanderbilt. Diego Pavia, if ruled eligible, and if he chooses to stay, which all signs point to he will stay, and it would really suck if he didn't. All signs point to he will stay. If he stays and is ruled eligible, boom, you got your quarterback.
Yeah.
The problem is it's not a guarantee he's going to be your quarterback. So
Yeah.
Vanderbilt has to weigh the risk reward. Do we pursue one of these quarterbacks like Mateer that is in the portal right now that is, I don't know, not as proven as Pavia, but is still extremely talented, or you take the risk of being stuck with Blaze Berlowitz or Drew Dickey as your quarterback? And I know there's a spring portal. I know there will be an opportunity, but right now is when you get one of those quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You get him in now. Diego Pavia is the very rare occurrence that was not a spring enrollee, that was a star at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
So maybe some people can point out other examples. I can't think of any. But this is a huge ruling, and Vanderbilt's having to weigh, do we pursue one of these quarterbacks? But at the same time, it's going to be almost impossible, even if you throw the bag at these guys, to get one of these transfer portal quarterbacks to commit to a place that's not at least stating you're the front runner in a quarterback competition. Because if they can't state that, because they know there's no way Diego Pavia is not the starter game one if he's ruled eligible. So no way, if I am a transfer portal quarterback, am I committing to Vanderbilt?
It's the ultimate damned if you do, damned if you don't from Vanderbilt's perspective. Like, they are truly between a rock and a hard place.
So there's nothing to do. It's all sitting on this judge's ruling. And at the end of the day, the defense can be fantastic. I'm not meaning this as a bad way. If they have Drew Dickey or Blaze Berlowitz as the starting quarterback, it's going to be a terrible product to watch. So this is huge.
Yeah.
And maybe Vanderbilt has multiple contingency plans, but they're just in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Because I think most Vanderbilt fans, almost all, want Diego back. If Diego can't come back, it's not an indictment of him. You have to have a backup plan in place.
Yeah.
And right now with Nate Johnson transferring, there is no backup plan in place. Are you going to start a true freshman in Jack Elliott?
Yeah.
I mean, what do they have? So there's a lot going on. And we will know more soon. But right now, huge question marks over the most important position on this 2025 Vanderbilt football team.
Yeah.
But we still have 2024 Vanderbilt football to discuss. So we're
crazy.
We're going to go to the TDR cocktail break, and then we are going to break down and evaluate and predict Vanderbilt's upcoming bowl game in the Birmingham Bowl against Georgia Tech. So grab yourself a cold one, grab yourself a warm one, and we will be right back after the TDR cocktail break. Welcome back from the TDR cocktail break, and welcome back into episode 295 of the Door Report. On a lovely Monday, December 16th, Trevor, we have the Birmingham Bowl.
Beham, baby.
Birmingham Bowl to preview. We don't have 3 keys to the game like we normally do, or 3 keys to victory like we normally do, just because you're looking at such different things in a bowl game.
It's a weird
like,
thing.
Before keys to the game were we need to see pass rush, we need to contain Haynes King, running the football, and it's like at this point you're kind of past the point of improving on anything. And at the same time, we can do 3 keys because I know what mine are. 3 keys to victory.
I mean,
but they're not going to have anything to do with building on the season.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah.
All right. This is it for the 2024 team. So we will do our three quick keys.
Okay.
But they're so game oriented
Mhm.
that they're going to be really fast.
Yeah. You were at the 2013 Birmingham Bowl,
No.
right? You weren't?
No, the last bowl game I've gone to was 08 Music City Bowl.
Are you serious?
Yep.
Oh my God. I
Don't
was gonna
blame me.
I
I
was
was
that-
in high school.
That is true. That is. I was gonna
Blame
say.
my father.
I was gonna say, dude. Could you imagine? Well, we'll go back to the 08 Music City Bowl. Isn't it crazy that like just 2 11-year-old boys, no idea that the other even exists, and however many years later, they be having a podcast together.
Who would have thunk it?
Where'd you sit at the Music City Bowl?
I can see the seats. Upper deck of, I guess then it was
Third level?
LP Field. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Left, like I can see the seats.
Yeah.
I can see the kneel.
Were
down.
you close
I
to
was on the
where?
end.
So you were close to
I
where they
was
have
not.
those fake houses.
It's hard to say because they didn't have those at the time.
Okay.
But I was not towards the 50. I was more towards the end zone.
I was towards the end zone as well, club level.
But I'll have to ask my dad. I'm sure he knows what the actual section
Whenever
was.
Vanderbilt recovered the touchdown in the end zone,
Dude,
was it
you're
in
getting
your end zone?
Way too. And if you think I remember that, you're
You don't? Oh, see, it was my
If
end
you-
zone.
Dude, I can barely remember like a year ago. I have vague memories that I'm not.
I
even
remember
sure-
everything about that
No,
game.
so my shout out to my father, Steve Byrum. He will say this is a Byrum curse. He talks about it. He used to talk about it all the time, joking when I was
Yeah.
a kid. He's like, I don't even remember until like high school. He's like, I don't have any memory of
Just
that.
dissociative
Nothing.
amnesia.
He's like, I have like generalized like,
Yeah.
memories, but he's like, I details and stuff. I don't remember anything like that. I remember
That's fascinating.
very specific like memories, but like if you're like, I have a great memory for numbers and things. But if you're talking about like, do I remember what end zone that ball? I have no memory of that.
Oh, see, I remember all that.
None of it. But I do remember wearing a Vanderbilt Nike shirt in the dressing room at a Target that was a Vanderbilt Nike shirt.
Uh-huh.
And the woman that was in the dressing room, I was with my mom and my little brother, and I was in like 6th grade or 7th grade.
Uh-huh.
And she said, "Oh, are you a Vanderbilt fan?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "This is after they were 5-0 5-0." And she was like, I just hope they keep winning and they win it all and they win the national championship. And that was the first time in my little brain that I had ever thought Vanderbilt can win a national championship in anything.
And they get dropped to
But
Mississippi
that's
State.
the weird part. The point I'm saying about my memory is I vividly remember that. But no, I don't remember
Okay.
which end zone they recovered that.
My last question, do you remember after 5-0, the next game, whenever they went to Mississippi State and got killed?
Vaguely.
I remember that. I don't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday, but I'm like, stuff with Vanderbilt, I'm like, dude, I remember.
Birmingham Bowl, December 27th, 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, Birmingham, Alabama, broadcast on ESPN. Me and Trevor will be in the stadium in Birmingham. I'm already off work.
In the same section.
In the same section, about 10 to 12 rows apart.
Yep.
I want to point out, any Vanderbilt fan, if you have a valid excuse, please submit your excuse to
Yeah.
the Door Report Twitter DMs.
We'll
and
provide a
We
form.
will approve or deny.
We'll provide a form.
Yeah, tough,
Yeah.
very tough time to be an approver or denier in American society.
Do you want to handle that?
Mark Norman.
Do you want to handle
No,
that?
Let's just move on right from
Okay.
that. But
no forms.
So actually, my office in Brentwood, we got acquired by another company. Our office is shutting down the 31st.
Rest in peace.
I'm being kept on by the new company, but most people are being laid off. That Friday, the 27th, is our last Friday in the office, and they're having a big lunch and like a going away for everybody. And I'm missing it for the Vanderbilt game,
Yeah.
for the bowl game. People that are great people, incredible people I worked with at this company. So I wish them all the best in the future. I'm actually kind of sad about missing it, but I'm doing it for the Doors.
Yeah.
So you better submit a valid excuse.
Yeah.
Is all that I'm saying.
Just send them a message
Easy
on LinkedIn.
drive. 3 and some change. Just a reminder as well, if you have not secured tickets, Vanderbilt is sitting on the east side. The east side. I repeat, the east side.
Not the west.
Not the west.
The east.
The east.
Where the
East
sun rises.
Exactly.
The sun rises in the east, sets in the west. We are on the side where the
On
sun
east,
rises.
East. I just want to keep repeating that because there have been some questions.
Yes.
East side. East side.
If you go east of Birmingham, you go to Atlanta.
You go to the east side. Okay. Now that we've got that out of the way. Vanderbilt's opponent. We have not talked about Georgia Tech pretty much at all outside of saying the name Haynes King.
Nah, dude, because they suck. Vandy's coming.
Pause.
Unpause.
Really, no, that was a brutal choice of words there. But Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I do connect the dots
most people have formed their opinion on Georgia Tech based on 2 games.
Yes.
And those games were the first game of the season for Georgia Tech and the last game of the season for Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
First game of the year, nationally televised in Ireland. Georgia Tech played at the time the highly ranked Florida State Seminoles.
Yes.
They beat Florida State 24-21. That was a big deal and sent shockwaves across college football. Turns out Florida State sucked.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the end for Florida State for the season. Then Georgia Tech started out playing Georgia during rivalry week. Started out up, 14-0?
Yeah.
Dominating Georgia. Actually basically had the game won until Haynes King fumbled. Then went into multiple overtimes, ended up losing to Georgia 44-42. So Georgia Tech fans basically across the board think they're too good to be playing in the Birmingham Bowl.
Yes.
That's the gist of it. They do have a win over number 4 Miami on their resume, but they also have losses to number 19 Louisville. They have a loss to Syracuse. They have a loss to number 12 Notre Dame. They have a loss to Virginia Tech, and they have a loss to number 7 Georgia. Georgia Tech's a good team.
Yeah.
They are a good team. Nobody's devaluing that. However, just like we said last episode, the resumes between Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech, as well as the season statistics, are very even.
Yeah.
I think you would maybe give the slight edge to Georgia Tech. And that's why they're a 2.5-point favorite over Vanderbilt, is you would give the ever so slight edge, which is what a 2.5-point favorite is. Vanderbilt's currently money line plus 106, I believe, on FanDuel.
Ooh, that's low.
Georgia Tech is currently minus 128. So the 2.5 points is the easiest to get in all of gambling. That 0.5 point to get to 3, that's a bigger point.
Yeah.
But Georgia Tech's resume is slightly better, but overall these 2 teams are very, very similar. Like I said, I'm just going to recap Georgia Tech's season. Started out the year beating number 10 Florida State 24-21. Then they beat fellow Vanderbilt opponent Georgia State at home 35-12. Lost to Syracuse 31-28. Beat VMI at home 59-7. Lost on the road at number 19 Louisville 31-19. Beat Duke at home 24-14. Went on the road to North Carolina and beat them 41-34. Lost at home to number 12 Notre Dame 31-13. Went on the road to Virginia Tech, lost 21-6. At home, they beat number 4 Miami, by far their best win of the season, 28-23. At home, they beat NC State by 1 point, 30-29. And then they closed out the season with a 44-42 loss to the number 7 Georgia Bulldogs. So a very good resume overall for Georgia Tech, but you could say the exact same thing about Vanderbilt if you just run through the schedule that same way. I'm not going to do that because everyone that's listening knows, but you can run through, beat Virginia Tech, beat Alcorn State, beat number 1 Alabama, lost to number 5 Texas, lost to number 8 Tennessee. Like, the losses aren't bad. The wins are pretty solid. Georgia Tech's slightly better. That's my evaluation. But where bowl games get more interesting and way more complicated now is the damn transfer portal that we spent so much time talking about in segment 1. It is not exclusive to one team to lose a lot of people to the portal and just have a lot of guys going into the portal in general. It's just the new college football.
Yeah.
Some of these guys I'm about to read from Georgia Tech are completely irrelevant, similar to guys Vanderbilt has had enter the portal. Guys that didn't play, barely contributed. Some of these guys are guys Georgia Tech does not want to lose.
Yeah.
Guys that Georgia Tech definitely wanted back, and they've entered the portal. So I'm just starting from top to bottom. This is the order by date. They were listed on On3 Sports. This is not by how good they are. The first entry to the portal was senior wide receiver Christian Leary. on the season for Georgia Tech, only had 3 receptions for 27 yards. He is now committed to Western Michigan. They also had an edge rusher, Christian Burkhalter, enter the portal. He didn't play last season. Now to the first contributor that has entered the portal. Offensive tackle Corey Robinson II started 7 games at left tackle for Georgia Tech. Definitely a guy. I would compare him a bit, not an even comparison, to Gunnar Hansen.
Yeah.
This is the only loss Vanderbilt has had is a starting tackle. They would definitely prefer to have Gunnar Hansen. It's the only bad loss Vanderbilt has had. This is, I don't want to say equally, but relatively similar on the Georgia Tech side. Moving on, they also had a wide receiver / tight end, Leo Blackburn, enter the transfer portal, 1 catch for 24 yards on the season. Their backup quarterback, Zach Byrum, similar to Nate Johnson, has entered the transfer portal. He's actually committed to Minnesota. Played a decent amount of snaps. I think had like 400-something yards passing.
I think that kid's actually really good.
Yeah, I think Zach Byron's very talented. That's why he committed to a Power 4 program, but also not like a major loss for the bowl game for Georgia Tech. Haynes King is their starter. They also had a defensive lineman in Horace Lockett enter the transfer portal. He did not play last season. Now on to another key transfer portal entry, safety / defensive back Tay Seymour. 45 tackles, tied for 6th on the team in 2024, as well as 2 passes defensed. He ended up actually committing to Auburn, so he will be playing in the SEC and matched up against Vanderbilt next season. Georgia Tech has also had a defensive lineman, Uke Ilo, enter the transfer portal, a freshman that did not play in 2024. And then arguably the biggest entrant into the transfer portal for Virginia Tech, or not Virginia Tech, I'm going to do that multiple times, for Georgia Tech, is edge rusher Romello Height. 34 tackles on the season, tied for 8th on the team, 2.5 sacks, tied for 2nd on the team, 1 interception, tied for 1st on the team, and 2 forced fumbles, tied for 1st on the team. So arguably a top 5 defender for Georgia Tech has entered the portal. They've lost also, I think I skipped over him, the biggest. I said Romello was the biggest, but I think the biggest here is Eric Singleton Jr., Georgia Tech's leading wide receiver. Has entered the portal. That's the guy I had highlighted here that I skipped over. He is their team leading wide receiver in yardage, 56 catches, 2nd on the team, for 754 yards, 1st on the team, and 3 receiving touchdowns, tied for 1st on the team. He also had 21 carries for 131 yards and a touchdown on the season. That is a 6.2 yard per carry average. So a big playmaker loss for Georgia Tech, a huge playmaker on the defensive side loss for Georgia Tech. Overall, going into the bowl game, I don't know the status of those guys playing. Do you?
I know
Tay is not playing.
I'm pretty positive as to what I read earlier. It was indicated that Romello Height would not play. Also, like to note, Romello Height, I followed his recruiting very heavily in 2019. Almost a Tennessee kid.
Okay.
Very good edge rusher. Very, very good edge rusher.
But so far, the only guy we definitively know is not playing for Vanderbilt in the bowl game is Gunnar Hansen.
And Nate Johnson.
Well, yeah. I put Nate Johnson like that. He's Zach Byron and Nate Johnson are relative.
2 peas in a pod.
I think Zach Byron's a more talented quarterback, but the amount of playing time he was utilized.
Yeah.
But he's not like a huge loss for one game.
Going back
he
to
would be
Utah.
a loss. He would be a loss for a whole season, but he's not a loss for one game.
Going back to Utah.
Nate Johnson.
Yeah.
Really, I didn't see that. Okay, good pull. So that's basically the breakdown on who has entered the portal for Virginia Tech. Or good God, Georgia Tech. I don't know how many times I've already done that. I'm gonna keep doing it, and I can't stop.
We can just call them the Hokies.
Here we go. The Hokies. No. Jesus
Christ.
They're not the Hokies. They're the Yellow Jackets.
The Yellow Jackets.
Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech. Getting to Georgia Tech's team stats. Jesus Christ. Okay.
I thought you did that on purpose.
No.
And then I saw your face like he didn't do that on
Dude,
purpose.
it's screwing me up bad. Because we've talked so much Virginia Tech this year, football and basketball.
Yeah.
And there's been so many guys that are now visiting / have been offered.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech.
Georgia
Okay.
Tech.
Georgia Tech's best 2 players. Let's get to that on the offensive side. Number 1, the offense runs through Haynes King. He is the man. On the season, 171 completions on 236 attempts for 1,900 yards, 72% completion percentage, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception. Reminds you a bit, they're different. Reminds you a bit of Pavia. Takes care of the football, nothing excessive. Like Pavia's flashy,
Yeah.
but Haynes King's not a burner, but he can run.
Yeah.
And he's a good runner. Haynes King on the year, 114 carries for 578 yards and 11 touchdowns. 11 touchdowns. So Haynes King, even though he did have the fumble against Georgia, I'm taking a couple shots here, or Georgia Tech fans. But Haynes King, a very good runner. In fact, a lot of his stats are pretty damn similar to Pavia's. So Diego Pavia on the year, 164 attempts 164 completions on 277 attempts, 2,100 yards passing, 59% completion percentage, 17 touchdowns, 4 picks. Lower completion percentage, more touchdowns, more balls thrown downfield. Also running the football, Pavia 176 carries, 716 yards, 6 touchdowns. These two teams are an interesting matchup. They're not the same, but they are in overall play style kind of similar.
Yeah.
So they're interesting in that way. The other guy that I want to point out on Georgia Tech's roster, they have some good running backs, specifically Jamal Haynes. 152 carries for 808 yards and 9 touchdowns on the season. That's a 5.3 yard per carry average. Very talented guy.
Alabama transfer.
Yep. Alabama transfer. Like I said already, Eric Singleton Jr., their leading receiver, is entered the transfer portal. They also have Mark Rutherford, who's actually their receptions leader on the season with 59 catches for 670 yards, tied with Eric Singleton for 3 touchdowns. Not a huge turnover creating team in Georgia Tech, but they also don't turn the ball over.
Yeah.
So very similar to Vanderbilt, they just do not turn the ball over. As a percentage of pass plays, Vanderbilt throws interceptions 1.49% of the time. That's 9th in the country. Georgia Tech throws them 1.73% of the time. That's 20th in the country. Neither of these teams throw picks.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech a little bit more efficient running the football. They run the ball 51st most as a percentage of overall plays in the country, averaging 4.9 yards per rush. That is 34th in the country. Compare that to Vanderbilt, runs the ball 58% of the time, 25th in the country, only averaging 3.6 yards per carry, 106th in the country. Throwing the football, a little bit of a flip. Vanderbilt only throws the ball 41% of the time, 110th in the country. Georgia Tech throws it 45% of the time, 84th in the country. Both teams run the ball predominantly. But Georgia Tech averaging 7.2 yards per pass attempt. That's 67th in the country. Vanderbilt slightly better, 7.7 yards per pass attempt, 39th in the country. So in sack numbers, this is something else I wanted to get to. Georgia Tech, and I don't know if their starting left tackle is going to be playing, whatever it is. They don't give up sacks. Haynes King does not get sacked. They are second in the country in sack percentage as a percentage of dropbacks, only getting sacked 1.7% of the time. They're only getting sacked 1 to 2 times per 100 dropbacks. That is impressive. Vanderbilt, not horrendous. You know, Pavia is mobile. The offensive line has been okay, but Pavia has great pocket awareness. Vanderbilt, 49th in the country, getting sacked 5.28% of dropback attempts. Like I said, neither team turns the ball over that much. They don't necessarily create turnovers. Neither side creates turnovers, but also neither side turns over the ball. So both are winning the turnover margin per game. Vanderbilt plus 0.5, 32nd in the country. Georgia Tech plus 0.2, 53rd in the country. But in takeaways per game, both teams are outside the top 100. Vanderbilt only has 1.1 takeaways per game. That's 101st in the country. Georgia Tech's only generating 0.9 takeaways per game. That's 115th in the country. But on the other side, both teams are top 10 in giveaways. So Vanderbilt only has 0.6 giveaways per game. That's 3rd in the country. Georgia Tech only has 0.7. That's 8th in the country. So don't expect a lot of turnovers.
No.
Don't expect a lot of chaos. Expect a lot of responsible decision-making from the quarterbacks and a lot of running.
Yeah.
That's what you have to expect in this game. I didn't even hit on the line, did I?
Yeah, you
for
did.
this game.
2.5?
Yeah, 2.5, but the over-under is 51.5.
Yeah.
If I don't know if I'm going to bet the over-under on this game because I can see both teams. Bowl games are always weird.
Yeah.
But if I was a betting man, I'd bet the under
Yeah.
in this game. It's not that offenses aren't going to have success, just both teams run the ball and neither team turns it over.
Yeah.
And that's going to result in a field position battle for the most part. And that doesn't often result in high scoring games. So
No, yeah.
that's a very, very long stat run. So Trevor, please break that up.
I think that this is going to be probably one of the quickest games we've sat through all year. I think, like you said with the stats, both teams run the ball heavy. Both teams want to run the ball. Both teams are pretty good at running the ball for the most part. I would not be shocked if this is a 2:30 kickoff. I would not be shocked if this game is over by 5 o'clock. Maybe even earlier. I think it is going to be a very, very fast-paced game.
The last stat I wanted to get out here is time of possession percentage, because I think just blindly looking at average for time of possession is dumb in a way. But time of possession percentage as an overall, both of these teams are in the top 40. Georgia Tech possesses the ball 52.86% of the game. That's 27th in the country. Vanderbilt possesses the ball 51.74% of the game. That's 40th in the country. So both of these teams basically go in with the same game plan, relatively similar quarterbacks, relatively similar running backs, relatively the same struggles with explosive playmakers on the outside, decent but not great defenses. It's going to be an interesting matchup. I think the intrigue on the outside, both of these teams have quarterbacks with name recognition nationally. Haynes King has name recognition, and God knows Diego Pavia has name recognition. So I think uniquely this bowl game, ACC versus SEC, even though people claim they're meaningless, and to an extent they kind of are, I think this game will draw some more eyes than some other games might, just because these are two very interesting schools and also an old school traditional rivalry on top of everything. What is it called? The Battle of the Cowbell?
I believe so, yeah. I don't think the last time we played Georgia Tech was like 20. Hold on, let me get it. 2017.
Close.
2016.
2016.
Because Torrin Ferguson was celebrating after he got a pass breakup in the end zone when Vanderbilt was down like 3 possessions, and it pissed me off.
Vanderbilt got dominated. So this was a traditional rivalry between two teams in the South. The all-time record, Georgia Tech leads it 20-15-3.
Yeah.
So Georgia Tech's won 20, Vanderbilt's won 15, 3 ties. Vanderbilt, however, has not beaten Georgia Tech since 1941.
Oh, wow.
Georgia Tech currently has a 6-game win streak ranging from 1966 to 2016. But that is due to a tie in 1965 at home for the Vanderbilt Commodores, a 10-10 tie between Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech.
Bet my dad was at that game.
So the last time Vanderbilt beat Georgia Tech was 10-18-1941. Vanderbilt won a thrilling battle, 14-7. Prior to that, Vanderbilt had really dominated, but recently Georgia Tech 6 in a row.
Bet my dad was at that game too. Old ass man.
Are they actually going to exchange the cowbell?
I don't think so. I don't even think that exists. It's somewhere in a storage facility. It would be awesome.
It would be so awesome.
You get the bowl trophy and the cowbell. That would be awesome.
That would be incredible.
I don't think they exchanged it in 20. If they did, I don't remember it.
They should have.
If
they didn't, we should bring it back. I'm sure it's in Georgia Tech's possession.
Should we bring cowbells to the game?
Some are saying.
Hey, how does one acquire a cowbell?
Let's figure that out.
Do I have to go to Tractor Supply Company? I don't even think they have them. Amazon.
We'll go to Amazon. We'll buy.
If somebody's got a cowbell, let me know.
Yeah, hook us up. All right. So we've got all kind of the stats out of the way. We've got the general team stats. We got the transfer portal. You want to get to 3 quick keys to the game and then get to our predictions?
Beautiful. I'm not going to really elaborate on these. These are going to be so obvious, so vanilla. The Haynes King doesn't get sacked a lot. The Georgia Tech offensive line doesn't give up a lot of pressure. You're gonna have to do something if you want to win this game. You're gonna have to bring exotic blitzes. It's like you know what I mean. Like you want to win, you want to get a bowl win, but like you said, there's nothing you can build upon. So it's sort of like the ultimate house money game. So why not just bring an insane amount of pressure? Because who cares? So got to sack him at some point.
Yeah, I mean, these are all going to be obvious. We're not going to expound on these because at this point, we're going to be repeating ourselves.
We've said everything over this year.
But My number one key is just going to be plain and simple. I'm not even including time of possession because both teams are going to be vying for that. Vanderbilt has to win the turnover battle. I'm going to give a specific 2+ turnovers. Vanderbilt has to create 2+ turnovers. They don't have to win the battle by 2, but they have to create 2+. I think any type of relative, I don't want to call it chaos, but any type of turnover battle or chaos that is created, I think will benefit Vanderbilt in this type of game. I think Pavia is more built for that. I think this team kind of thrives on a little bit of chaos, different than Georgia Tech, who is basically just beaten who they should beat throughout this year outside of Miami and lost who they should lose to. So it's a little different. But, yeah, that's my number one is neither of these teams turn the ball over. So to win this game, Vanderbilt's going to have to make Georgia Tech do something they don't often do, which is turn it over. And probably contributing to that is going to be pressure on Haynes King. So I think those go hand in hand. So I think that's a perfect key one for both of us.
Well, now we're hand in hand. We're going to go hand in hand. I'm going to have to create turnovers. Two very conservative teams that you're going to have to win field position. Jesse Miraco is going to have a great game. Martell Height, if God willing, we make Georgia Tech punt, Martell Height's going to have a couple big returns, something that we know he's incredibly capable of. So I'm going to go field position as special teams.
Number 2, big time, bold letters, highlight it, emphasize it. This is important. Turnovers, you're going to be able to look in the box score, and if Vanderbilt wins that turnover battle or creates 2+ turnovers, I'm very confident they win the game. This one is just something they have to do. Vanderbilt has a way better kicker than Georgia Tech. So my key number 2 is win special teams overall. They need to create with Martell Height some explosive punt returns. You saw Junior Sherrill's capability in the Tennessee game. Get one, it doesn't have to be a touchdown, but flip the field. Kind of what you said in a field position on a punt return or on a kickoff. Get it out to the 35 or the 40 or flip the field on a net punt that ends up only netting 15 yards because of a big punt return. But more importantly and more specifically, Vanderbilt with Brock Taylor, kicking-wise this season, is hitting 84.21% of their kicks.
Pretty good.
34th in the country. Georgia Tech, 63% field goal conversion percentage, 118th in the country.
Not great.
Not great. So the headline is special teams, but specifically the two little sub comments I have, this little sub bullet points are one relatively big return, doesn't have to be a touchdown, and also just your kicker continue to be better.
Yeah.
Brock Taylor, at some point, if Vandy wins, Georgia Tech is going to have to miss a field goal, and Vanderbilt's got to capitalize.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to be specific here because I don't have broad-reaching impact of these, but 2+ turnovers and beat them in the kicking battle.
Yeah.
/ an explosive play. So maybe that's 3 keys, but I'm counting this 2.
Yeah. A rocket launcher game-winning field goal as time expires would feed trillions.
Oh.
Trillions. There's not even a trillion people on this earth, but it would still
would
feed
feel
trillions.
generations to come.
Oh, dude, whatever the next, we're in generation like alpha now, dude. Generation beta will get fed.
Generation Beta. There's no way that's going to be the name. There's no
That's
way.
what I'm going to call them.
Dude, whatever.
I'm gonna call those kids Generation
Whatever
Beta.
the real name is, they're Generation Beta now. We've named them TDR. We're the first. We named them.
We copyrighted that. We do want the licensing behind that.
Lawyers, we know some of you listen.
Give us
Trademark
your
that for
money.
us.
My key number 3, I don't know how healthy AJ Newberry is. I hope that he is healthy. He was on crutches against Tennessee. I don't know how serious it was. Regardless, you're going to need a big running game from our boy Seti. Has not really popped off or all that much like we thought he would. I would love nothing more than just to see Cedric Alexander 150-yard game. That'd be awesome. My key number 3.
I like that. Health would be what I would go with, but that's so general. Hopefully this team has gotten more healthy. So that's not my key number 3, but in general, a healthy Pavia, healthy running back room, healthy on the defensive side, all that. My key number 3 is going to be more specific. Vanderbilt, a little more penalties than you would want from a team that's living on the margins in Vanderbilt. This year, 48.9 penalty yards per game. That's 58th in the country. The funnier part of that, Vanderbilt's only committing about 5 penalties per game. That's actually top 30 in the country. The problem is every penalty they commit is a big penalty.
Yeah.
They're 117th in the country in penalty yards per penalty. They're almost averaging 10 yards per penalty. So they don't commit as many dumb little false starts, offsides, whatever you are, ineligible man downfield, but they tend to commit defensive holdings, holding penalties, DPI, like stuff that kills drives. So number one and number three on keys is going to be win the penalty battle, because on the other side, Georgia Tech is a team that does not commit penalties. That's been a key to them winning this season. They only commit 4.9 penalties per game. That is 18th in the country. They only average 37.8 penalty yards per game. That is top 10 in the country. So Georgia Tech doesn't commit penalties. Vanderbilt's kind of average. They need to at least be even. Cannot have those drive-killing holding calls.
Yeah.
You know, I can deal with some DPIs.
Yeah.
I can deal with some defensive holdings. With how Vanderbilt's offense runs, they cannot have those killer holding penalties.
Yeah.
That is what kills drives for them. They cannot recover on a 1st and 20 or a 2nd and 20. So to win this game, they got to win the penalty battle. Trevor, you want to run through our 3 keys before we do predictions?
Indubitably.
You forgot yours already?
My key number 1, get pressure on Haynes King, sack him. My key number 2, special teams, flip the field position. Martel Height going to have to have a couple big returns, or at least one.
You stole mine.
Oh, well, I give that back to you. I definitely just said field position. And number 3, I would like to see Cedric Alexander have a 150-plus yard game.
There we go. Run through mine really quickly. Mine was create 2+ turnovers. Number 2, special teams, 1 big return, and win the kicking battle. And my key number 3 is win the penalty battle / remain even with Georgia Tech in the penalty battle. So, Trevor, I've been kind of fluctuating on my prediction, but I think I've finally settled into one, because I do have dreams of a Brock Taylor walk-off field goal. So I've adjusted my prediction so that is a possibility, because I did have one score in mind, but now I've kind of bumped it a little bit so that can be a reality.
Oh, God.
So, Trevor,
I need it so bad.
What's your prediction?
I'm going to go Vanderbilt Commodores 28, Georgia Tech.
There we go.
Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets 17.
Okay. 28-17.
Vanderbilt
so the under
wins
is hitting.
Yeah, the under is hitting, and Vanderbilt wins by about 11.
So this goes a little bit against, and I think this is too many points. So I think at the end of the day, I'm not going to like my prediction because it is too many points.
Okay.
But no, I like it.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt 24, Georgia Tech 21. My original written down prediction was Vanderbilt 21, Georgia Tech 17. But when I really sat down, dug into the stats, I think the difference will be special teams.
Yeah.
I think the difference will be Georgia Tech will miss a field goal and Vanderbilt will hit a key one. I hope I'm right. I hope I look like Nostradamus.
Yeah.
I probably won't, and I'll probably be so wrong, but that's my bold prediction. So Vanderbilt 24, Georgia Tech 21. Trevor has Vanderbilt
28, Georgia Tech 17.
So both me and Trevor have Vanderbilt winning. No way I was coming on here last preview of the season and being wet blanket Will. But objectively, I would have predicted a loss if I think this Vanderbilt team's going to come out and lose.
Yeah.
I think Pavia will be playing like it's possibly his last game. I think he will be preparing that way, and I think we're going to see a masterful performance from Diego Pavia. But more than anything else, I have to get this out here since we both predicted wins. Bowl games now are a celebration. This is a celebration to go watch this team that was expected to win 2 to 3 games and has exceeded every expectation you could possibly have in the world. Go enjoy watching this team play.
Yeah.
Go enjoy watching Diego Pavia possibly operate for the last time as Vanderbilt's starting quarterback. Go appreciate these guys. This has been a fun season with memories we will never forget.
Yep.
Did it end in the best way? No. Vanderbilt lost 3 straight games in the season. It didn't end in magical fashion.
It could, though.
But it can. Let's go enjoy this, watch these guys play. And at the end of the day, it's not about whether they win or lose. The season's grade and story has already been written, and it's a success.
Yeah.
So this would truly just be the cherry and sprinkles on top of the sundae. We've already been given a sundae.
Yeah.
Fans were called crazy. I called you and Blake crazy for predicting Vanderbilt going to a bowl game. So let's just soak it all in. Enjoy it. Head down to Birmingham. Should be a hell of a time.
Dude, one last time in a random parking lot with the boys before a Vandy football game, before we embrace the cold, dark winter. There's nothing else I want more. There's nothing else I want more than just booling with the boys in a parking lot, crushing some beers, and watching some ball.
Before we fully shift over into basketball and baseball mode, one last time for the boys of fall. So, Trevor, anything else you want to add on here on a Monday edition of the Door Report on episode 295?
I never thought I'd say these words. Man, I love Vanderbilt football.
Man, I love Vanderbilt football, and I'm sad this season is ending. Those are words you don't often
Never
hear.
thought I'd say that.
So for myself, Will Byrum, and my co-host Trevor Hulan, and our producer Phoebe, who has abandoned us for our roommate Alex, this has been episode 295 of The Door Report, powered by 615 Collect.